For Where Hollywood Hides, here's Bob and Suzanne.
Chicken joke!
I'm Mrs. Cleaver.
From Television City in Hollywood.
Boy, the way Glenn Miller plays.
I have a feeling we're not in Kansas anymore.
We're on a mission from God.
Run, Forrest, run!
We can rebuild him. We have the technology.
You had me at hello.
Nanu.
Baby, you're the great.
I'm not going to be ignored.
Here comes the judge.
Go ahead. Make my day.
I got nowhere else to go!
Small cowbell.
That fashion.
There's anything wrong with that. You can't handle the truth.
I'm not an actor, I'm a movie star!
That's the story of my life. No respect. I don't get no respect at all.
I'm the dude.
I think this is the beginning of a beautiful friendship.
And now for something completely different.
There's no business like show business, like no business I know. Everything about it.
Welcome to Where Hollywood Hides. This is podcast episode number 45. My name is Bob McCullough.
And my name is Suzanne Herrera McCullough.
You're in a good mood today.
I am. 45. We're almost to 50.
We are. Today's exciting because we're talking to an old friend of mine, a blast from the past, one of the original cast members of Falcon Crest, who has become a major force in the acting world. Now, before we get started, let's not forget to remind everybody, go to the website at wherehollywoodhides.com, where you'll be able to pick up our hardcover full-color book, Where Hollywood Hides Santa Barbara, Celebrities in Paradise, and get free shipping. Also at the website, you'll see show notes on every single one of our interview episodes. And
I am constantly amazed how many people from around the world are ordering our book.
I think it's the free shipping. I mean, if you're in Australia...
No, it's the book.
Okay, well, if you're in Australia and you can get free shipping, that's a pretty good deal.
Oh, you're such a deal maker.
Well, so a lot of our customers do come from outside the U.S., and they do take advantage of that free shipping offer. So I just want to remind everybody, that's probably the best place to buy the book. You can also find it at Amazon.com. Speaking of Amazon, if you go to the website, you will see a number of Amazon banners where you can pick up practically anything you've ever wanted to buy in your entire life. And we appreciate your going to the website to do that because we actually get a nickel and then we can feed the dog.
Also, if you're in town, if you're a local or if you're visiting, you can get it at Chaucer's Bookstore. They've been fabulous. They've sold quite a few of our books. And we always like to support our local merchant.
Yeah, Chaucer's Books in Santa Barbara is one of the preeminent independently owned bookstores on the entire West Coast. And you could spend an entire day in there. And while you're there, be sure to pick up our book. Today we're talking to William R. Moses. I know him as Billy Moses because the first time I met him was on Falcon Crest. He was one of the original cast members. He actually performed in The Vintage Years, which was the original pilot produced by Lorimar and Warner Brothers. And that's the point at which I came in. And Billy and I worked together for a number of years. Just a fabulous guy. He's got a credit list you cannot believe. He's appeared in, I think, over 500 television episodes, 200 different series, ranging from things like, gosh, where do you start? Cold Case Files, Jane Doe. He's done CSI Miami. He's done The Mentalist, The Secret Life of the American Teenager, a number of television movies, including Killing Daddy. He appeared in Mad Men very recently. Perry Mason, he did all those movies opposite Raymond Burr. He appeared in Melrose Place, the miniseries War and Remembrance, Murder, She Wrote opposite Angela Lansbury. Gosh, he's worked with everybody.
The list goes on. He also has produced.
He has, and he's quite a fine writer, and I think we'll be talking about that in our conversation. So it's really an exciting day for us.
So let's go to the great Billy, or William R. Moses. Hi, Bill. How are you?
Good. It's been a long time.
Boy, time flies, huh?
It sure does. It sure does fly, doesn't it? I'm entirely too young to be this old.
In point of fact, I don't think you've changed that much. I mean, I saw you a couple months ago, and you look like the same kid to me.
For one thing, we used to know you as Billy.
Well, yeah. I studied with Kim Stanley years ago, and in my 20s, and she told me, she said, "Don't let people call you Billy anymore. They're trying to make you too young, and it's just you're a man." And it's like, so.
Well, I
anyway,
think
anyone who knows me as Billy, so but it seems to stick. So now I've gone the other way with it.
We knew you way back, so
you knew me when. Yeah,
that's right.
But you are professionally William R. Moses. Right.
I am professionally William R. Moses because there's a Bill Moses in the Guild, and he's an African American stuntman.
Uh-huh.
So you have to have I could be Billy R. Moses, which I was because Earl wanted it that way. Earl Hamner wanted it that way for a while, and then I kind of looked at that and I went, that doesn't look very good. And I said it better be William R.
Well, I think you've transcended whatever the nomenclature would be for you. When I look at the list of your credits in television and film, I don't think there are many guys of any age, forget the fact you're still a young man, of any age with 200 to 300 credits, are there? The range is just amazing.
Right, yeah. No, I've been fortunate. I've been able to keep going for a long time. And, I have noticed that I mean, when I sort of came on the scene, there were 3 networks, and it was the time of the nighttime soap. A lot of those people who were giant soap opera stars, are really not really involved in the industry anymore. So I feel fortunate that I've been able to keep going for a long time. So, and hopefully we'll keep going for a lot longer.
Well, I'm sure you will. At some point in time in your life, you have to make a decision. I think I'm going to be an actor. How did that all happen?
Well, I mean, it's sort of if you go way, way back, my parents, I grew up in Pasadena, or I didn't really grow up there. It was the first place I lived was in Pasadena, and my father, Richard Moses, was in fact a madman, and a madman really even paralleling the story that's on the show, Mad Men. Richard was the senior vice president for McCann Erickson, which was the biggest advertising firm in Southern California, in California actually at that time. And he was a Yale graduate, and he had that job at 29 years old, and had in fact a Carnation account, which is one of the storylines that's very much featured in Mad Men, and was a very, very sort of a golden boy. My parents, I was the youngest of 4, and my parents divorced when I was 3 and a half. My father moved to New York City and left my brothers and myself out here with my mom, and my mom was essentially a 30-year-old Pasadena housewife who wanted to be an actress, and at that time went to the Pasadena Playhouse to study acting with who was teaching there at that time was Stella Adler. And one of the people in the class with her was John Saxon, which we have parallels back to Falcon Crest days.
That's right.
Yeah. So my mom was went out and became this actress. And when I was a very young boy, my mom was a single actress in Hollywood with 4 boys, and I sort of grew up with the likes of Gene Hackman and Robert Loggia coming to the door to take my mom out to dinner and stuff like that. So
that's a real Hollywood scene there.
Yeah, it was. And then when I was 8 years old, my mom did The Undefeated and starred opposite John Wayne, and so I got to go down and see her there. And strangely, my mom was in that movie, and when that movie opened, we were all going to the Curtis School, which was it's located in a different place now, but at that time it was just sort of a very small little school. There was a man there named Alphonso Bell who was a widower. His wife had had a brain hemorrhage and died suddenly, and his kids were going to the Curtis School. And Alphonso was very good friends with Duke Wayne and went to the movie.
For our audience who may be too young to know, Duke Wayne was John Wayne, probably the biggest movie star of his generation.
Right. Well, they had been, John Wayne and Alphonso had been partners in the house in Acapulco and were longtime friends. Alphonso went to the premiere of the movie and wanted to know who the pretty blonde lady was, and somebody had remarked, oh, well, her kids go to she's single, and her kids go to the same school your kids do. And lo and behold, Alphonso showed up at the door one night, and my mom and Alphonso fell in love, and she got engaged to him when I was 8 and married him when I was 10. I was really raised by Alphonso. So when I was growing up, sort of athletics and school was my focus, and Alphonso...
Now you're going kind of fast. Alphonso Bell, we should note, was a very, very well-known congressman in California.
Well, yeah, he had his family is an old-time Los Angeles family. The Bell family is an old-time Los Angeles. City of Bell Gardens, and Santa Fe Springs were all originally part of what was a Spanish land grant property that came to the Bell family.
So your mother, this gorgeous actress, Marion McCargo, she caught the eye of one of the most prominent guys in the state, basically.
Yes, he had run for, he was at that time a 7-term U.S. congressman. He'd run for the mayor of Los Angeles twice.
What a
His
story.
father was the founder of Bel Air. I mean, the Bell family was drilling for water in the 1920s and hit Union Oil #1. So
I'll trade water for oil any day.
Right. So I mean, what happened was when they hit oil, the well blew out, and it melted. It was almost a mile away from where the ranch house was. It melted all the paint on the ranch house, and from the blast did, and they couldn't live there anymore. So Alphonso Sr. bought a tract of land west of Beverly Hills that went all the way to the Sepulveda Pass, and wanted to develop it as high-priced real estate. It's now currently what they call Bel Air. So.
That little town.
Right.
Right.
Your mom must have been something else.
My mom had this knack, whatever room my mom walked into, and I can remember this my whole life, whatever room my mom walked into, all eyes went to her. She just commanded stage and was a very larger-than-life personality. She was a real Miss Malaprop, and just say, I remember her being at the LA Tennis Club and going into the men's section where the men were playing cards, and she looked at all the men who were there sitting there playing poker or pinochle or whatever they were playing, and she goes, "Oh, it's so nice to be in the inner sanctimonious room."
So was it your mother's theatricality and her show business interest that stimulated yours?
I grew up, I went to the Harvard, it was now called Harvard Westlake. I went to Harvard School in Los Angeles, which was a prep school. My focus, Alphonso really wanted me to go into politics, be a lawyer and then go into politics, which is really what I thought I wanted to do. Growing up, my focus was school, and then I loved playing sports. I was a basketball player. I was all CIF in high school, and was really sort of thought, well, what I want to do is go to college and play basketball and then go to law school and then run for office, I went into college thinking that, and then I went east to what they call one of the poison ivies, the poison ivies would be Wesleyan, Williams, and Amherst, and I went to Wesleyan University, and a great school, but I got there and started to realize that, one, that basketball, which had been sort of the center of my universe, it just wasn't what it once was, and also I started to realize that, hey, I'm going to this great school, and everybody's happy about where I'm going, but I'm not really that happy, and I'm not sure that this is what I want to be. So I came back to Los Angeles and told my parents that I just don't think I went to the right place, and they said, that's fine, you can stay with us, but you'll have to work. And so I started working as an apprentice carpenter and doing construction work, and apprenticed with a guy named Ernie Lindbergh, who his claim to fame was that he had previously been Harrison Ford's partner.
Right.
And so I started working with Ernie and, working hard and kind of liking it. And I was at a party one night. This guy came up to me and he goes, "God, you look a lot like this guy Harry Moses did about 5 years ago." And I said, "Well, there's a reason for that. He's my brother. I'm his younger brother." And he goes, "Oh, I'm his commercial agent. Have you acted?" And I don't know what got into me. And I said, "Yeah, of course." And he goes, "Well, would you like to go on commercial auditions?" And I went, "Sure," just on a lark. And a week later, I got a Sprite commercial. Strangely, the person in the Sprite commercial with me that starred opposite me in the Sprite commercial was Jamie Rose.
Oh, that's funny.
Wow.
Yeah. So they needed somebody who could ride horses, and I had spent a lot of time with my dad, who was sort of an old cowboy, riding horses and was very familiar with horses. So, like most actors, they say, "Can you ride horses?" And whether they can or they can't, they always say yes. In my case, I actually could, so I got the job and got in front of the camera the first time, and it was horrible and wonderful, and it was sort of like flying and falling, all of these things all at once. And I don't think I was particularly good, but I was kind of interested.
And at this point, you had zero training.
At this point, I had zero training. I had done one play in high school, was not very good at it. I had zero training, probably wasn't very good in the Sprite commercial, even with no dialogue. Was very self-conscious.
Do you remember what your mom thought about that?
She was totally fine with it and had no problem with it whatsoever. My dad didn't like it and hated it that I had started to do this. And it was like, well, look, Dad, I'm going to go back to school. I'm just going to do this to make some spending money. And so I went back to USC and started going to school year-round. I would take all my classes. I lived in Westwood with all my friends who went to UCLA. But I would drive down to USC first thing in the morning and take all my classes. I'd take the earliest classes, and I'd try to be done by noon so I could go to commercial auditions in the afternoon. And between my freshman and my junior year, I did like 18 commercials. In those days, there would be, they'd have a commercial call, and they'd bring in 30 or 40 guys. And then the callback would be down to 3. And, I was blonde-haired and blue-eyed and athletic, and, there was a lot of market for that type of thing. These days, for a commercial, that same type of commercial, rather than 40 guys, it would be 400 or 500 with a callback at 50 or 60. It's a whole different, and there'll be 3 or 4 callbacks. It's a whole different sort of world out there. What happened was I started to get some commercials pretty regularly and started making some nice money. And then what I did do was I snuck around to professional acting classes at night. I remember meeting Jeff Corey the first time, and he was just entirely too scary. I lasted about 3 weeks in his class. But
I was going to say, Jeff Corey is like a legend.
Someone had said you should talk to him about his class, and he said, well, I can meet you on Wednesday at 1 o'clock and such an address. And I said, oh, I think I can be there. And he goes, you think you can be there? And it was like, no, I can be there. I can be there. And then I met with him and went to the class for a while, but he just was too intimidating. He was too intimidating. And as I was going into my senior year at USC, I auditioned for a little movie about a high school football player called Choices, and I got it. Demi Moore was cast to play my sister in the movie. So I got to work professionally for the first time with dialogue and everything with quite a good director, and that was really helpful. And then while I was finishing up the last week of that movie, Doris Saba, who was then at Lorimar, said there was a pilot called The Vintage Years. So I went and met Doris, and she said, wow, you're really kind of really right for this role, this one role in here.
Now, Bill, how old were you?
I was 20 years old. I was 20 years old when I read for that.
And if I'm understanding this correctly, you had only had one experience in front of a camera with real dialogue.
I had only had one experience in front of a camera with real dialogue.
Okay.
That's correct.
All right.
Yeah, so I went in and read for Doris, and Doris liked me, and I kept going back, and then I met Earl, and Earl liked me. And then we ended up making the pilot for The Vintage Years, which later became Falcon Crest, after it was recast and retooled, and how I survived all that retooling.
How did that feel being cast in a show that was a major effort on the part of CBS and Lorimar to produce a hit that would parallel Dallas, which was the #1 show at the time. And you're thrown into a cast of serious professionals. Robert Foxworth, Susan Sullivan, Jane Wyman. These are major acting talents, and you're 20 years old.
I remember I was majoring in international relations at USC, and I had to have my agent write a note to my professor signed by the network so I could screen test at CBS.
Oh, my God.
So I could miss my final.
Wow.
And reschedule my final. There were kind of 2 iterations of it, which was we did the pilot, which was The Vintage Years, and that was originally Clu Gulager and Samantha Agar. And they were later replaced by Robert Foxworth and Susan Sullivan. And both experiences with both of them were amazing. But the one that I can speak to most of all, because that's what the public would know, would be working with Susan, Robert, and Jane. My training was really given to me by the professionals I got to work with and by the fine examples that they showed me, particularly Susan and Robert. In particular, when I first started out on the show, Robert was very, very kind to me and very, very patient with me. Then also to watch them as models in terms of their professionalism and the way that they were prepared. And then the other part was, we had the 2 sides of the family. We had the Gioberti side and we had the Angela side. So I didn't work as much with Jane, and Jane had particularly had sparked to Lorenzo. I don't know that she was any tougher on me than she was on Lorenzo. I think she was more patient with Lorenzo because she had sort of a history through Fernando. with Lorenzo and Arlene. You know what I mean? But with me, she was quite tough and not extraordinarily patient. And her requirements were that you're always on time, that you're always prepared, and that you're always polite to the crew, and that you're always professional. And, you know, I think that she thought I was a dumb, know-nothing kid, which really I was. But years after, so I had done the Rock Hudson story, which at that time in 1987 was, you know, I played Mark Christian, to play a homosexual character on network television at that time was
huge.
It really hadn't been done.
Right.
Yeah, it hadn't been done. And my dad, who was, you know, very old school and not particularly enlightened in that area, you know, for him it was sort of like
must have been a shock.
Through a lot of changes.
It was a changing world.
It put him into shock, essentially. Yeah. But after the thing had aired, Jane called me.
Really?
Called me out of the blue and said, "I just want you to know that I've been watching what you're doing, and I'm so proud of you." And it was really sort of a really lovely full circle event with her.
Nice.
That she had, in her kind of stern way, had actually been kind of watching me as an actor and watching that process for me.
Well, that's quite a compliment, because those of us who knew Jane Wyman, she was not one to give a compliment easily unless you earned it.
It was, you know, kind of a big moment, a very surprising moment, but it was nice. That was certainly a nice moment.
So Falcon Crest was really an enormous break for you as a 20-year-old. Tell us you were on the show for, 6 years?
I did 139 episodes. The thing that, you know, youth is wasted on the young. We averaged a 37 share, so on a Friday night. That was our average. So more than 40 million people were watching on a Friday night. Now, a hit show is a 15 share. I mean, there's a hit show. So, I mean, it's a whole different thing, because there's so many more outlets now, and not as the concentration of viewership isn't. So television was really a powerful medium, and a medium that really got out there. It's not that it isn't now, it's just different. It was really during that period while I was working on Falcon Crest that the first cable contracts were negotiated with the Screen Actors Guild and all of that. It was the end of a certain era in television.
At the time, none of us realized just how powerful those moments were. And for you in particular, it set you on a kind of a meteoric, heartthrob career path.
I don't think I was old enough or mature enough to really understand what it was that was happening.
So, Bill, I'm just curious, when Falcon Crest became a big hit, and you were obviously a big part of the show, what was your dad saying at this time?
By that time, I was living on my own and paying my own bills and taking care of it, and I think that he thought it was a flight of fancy. I mean, it wasn't really until, many years later, I did a little independent movie called The Cactus Kid, which was about a father and son, and the father's a cop, and he finds out his son is terminally ill, and his son's dying wish is to rob a bank like his cartoon character, his favorite cartoon character, The Cactus Kid. So it's essentially a father and son road picture where the father actually engineers to rob a bank for his dying son, and then they hightail it to Mexico. And it was a movie that not a lot of people saw, but it was really after my dad went to that movie and saw that movie, and I must have been 38 or 39 years old when he said, I know I've given you a lot of hard time about this, but you're really an actor. I really am totally on board now. By that time, I've been an actor for 20 years. So I guess Falcon Crest, I thought he thought was a pretty
fluke,
better late than never, right? So Falcon Crest was a tremendous run, 6 years, but you left early.
You know, the thing that we talked about, which was that the soap behind the soap, the soap about the making of the soap is almost more fascinating than the soap.
Yep.
Because of the politics, the politics and the amount of money that was being thrown around, and in the case of Falcon Crest, the soap opera genre had sort of peaked around season 5, and then with the introduction of Miami Vice, the genre as a whole started to see some decline. It was in that period where there were a lot of changeovers in writing and showrunners, and there was a lot of internal turmoil within the show.
How does the cast become involved in all of that? I mean, I always tried very hard to insulate actors from the drama of the writing staff or the network. I mean, you guys had enough to do.
In my case, it was that the writing it had, all of a sudden we weren't making the same show. rather than making Falcon Crest, which had its own sort of identity as a soap opera, and it had some aspects that were different from other soap operas that I thought were quite wonderful and made it distinct. I think we started trying to make a show that was counter-programming to Miami Vice, and in doing that, we were losing, in my case, it's just the writing I felt wasn't as good. And in my immaturity and in my youth, I said, I thought I was speaking to a reporter off the record, and it wasn't. And it got in, it got published, and I got in a lot of trouble. so when that became part of it, by the time I'd left, I was fortunate enough to, 6 months after that, I landed Mystic Pizza, and had all of a sudden, I had done a film that I was really excited about and really proud of.
Which brought you into the whole Perry Mason orbit.
That was probably the most fun job I've ever had, in that we would make between 3 and 6 movies a year. So we'd work for a month and be off for a month and then work for another month. And we shot them all in Denver, and I had a full-time apartment in Denver. And Raymond and I had such a wonderful relationship with him. He was such a complicated, kind of difficult personality, but the two of us just really got along. We really had it was a very good professional relationship, but also just a friendship. He's a guy I really miss. I think about the 5th movie in, NBC had been happy with the ratings of the movies, and they decided to reward us by having us shoot one of the movies in Paris. And,
that must have been nice.
That was nice, yeah. I had they stayed at the Royal Monceau and had a suite at the Royal Monceau and worked. They brought me in a week early and then worked for 5 weeks on the movie and stayed afterwards, and actually turned 30 in Paris with the crew who I'd become great friends with. On the last night of the shoot, I went up to, I bought Raymond a bottle of champagne, and I went up to his suite and I knocked on his door and I said, "This is for you, thank you. This has been great. What a great experience." And he's a big guy, just physically imposing kind of man. And he opened the door and looked at me, and he took the champagne and goes, "Oh, that's very nice." And he stared at me and he goes, "I want you to know something. You were born in the wrong year."
What does that mean?
You were born in the wrong year. And then he shuts the door in my face. I don't.
Okay.
That's the end of my experience with him in Paris. And then I stayed an extra week, and the production company sent a limo to take me to the airport. The limo driver, who had been Raymond's limo driver when he was in Paris, he goes, "Mr. Burr had me look all day long for a bottle of port from the year 1959, the year that you were born. But there was a freeze. There was no port that year." so
you were born in the wrong year.
2 months later, we're in Denver, and we're getting ready to roll in our first scene, and they go, "Speed." And just before they call Mark, I lean down to Raymond. I'm standing behind the desk, and I lean down to him, and I go, "I know why I was born in the wrong year." And he laughed for 15 minutes straight. He thought that was the greatest thing in the world, that I figured that out, and that I answered his question 2 months later. He was just that kind of guy. He was really an interesting person. Really,
yeah, it sounds like you've had the opportunity to have some wonderful mentors as an actor. Let me ask you this question for people who have not had your great success. What do you see as the difference between acting for television and acting in a feature film like Mystic Pizza? How is that experience different?
It's changing. It's changing all the time now, because television, particularly premium cable, has become such a great medium. So the differences are less, and there used to be a great difference between the two, between television acting and film acting, and now I'm not so sure that that's true. Primarily the difference in those days was that, a television screen was, if you had a big television screen, it was 35 inches, and a movie screen's 30 feet. So you really have to be, the moments are very internal. You have to feel the moment and wait on the moment. It's a more deliberate kind of approach, a more waiting for the actual impulse of the line to come to you, because if you don't, it will read false on a big screen. And second, you're not constrained by, we need this act to be 12 and a half minutes because we got to place a commercial, so we need to pace up the scene. And also at that time in 1987 to develop the script for Mystic Pizza from the original script that Amy Holden Jones wrote, and by the time it went through the Sam Goldwyn Company and 5 different writers and rewrites and polishes, they'd spent 2 years on the script. The script was it had more time to be honed than the traditional television script would have been in those days. So that was the difference then. The difference now, I think, is less and less and less, and it's sort of gone the other way. When you look at the real premium cable shows, the Homelands and the Mad Men, and those are original scripts written by fabulous writers with unique stories, and they're given some time to shoot them. And also they're not, because it's on premium cable, constrained by television, and they're not constrained in the big features now. You're seeing more blue screen, which is special effects, more car chases, more explosions, more things that designed to get skateboard riding 14 and 15-year-old boys into the theater than really story-driven material. Sort of reverse now, the direction. It's not to say that you don't see that in film, but it seems to me, based on what I'm seeing, which is that story-driven material, I think there's more opportunity in television now.
Yeah, there's been quite a paradigm shift, there's no doubt.
At what point did you decide you wanted to produce?
Producing is, I had done that. I worked a lot for this man, Pierre David, who does a lot of these thriller movies for Lifetime. And that became part of the package that we did when 4 or 5 movies into it, where I got to get producing credit on some of these features because of the way he structured the deal, and also because we had developed enough of a relationship. Pierre was a very hands-on producer, but there are sometimes when he's not there. And then in certain instances, if the producer isn't there, who's next making decisions, and Pierre's our sensibilities were enough so that he felt confident enough to let me have that, and always taking a second position to him. But if he wasn't there, then I would have some latitude in terms of, let's shoot this scene rather than that scene, and let's just I had some latitude that way. So that's how that originally happened. And as it's going forward, at this point, I don't know how many thousands of scripts I've read and how many times I've been in front of a camera, and I understand the process of filmmaking and really love it.
Do you have a preference? Television acting, motion picture acting, or stage work? Is there one that you favor more than the other?
Well, no. The answer is I like good acting, and I don't really care if it's on film or television or stage. I just like it when you can catch the wave and really be in the moment, and really, the acting teacher that I had years ago was Kim Stanley, who was, part of the original core group of the Actors Studio, and was there with Strasberg and Elia Kazan, and was really at the formation of what has become the method in American acting circles, and what she would say to me privately behind closed doors is she would say, stop planning what you're going to do in the scene. Just be in the scene moment to moment. Because if you stay with it moment to moment, it's going to take you someplace you never knew you could go. I didn't understand that in my 20s. In my 50s, that's starting to make some sense. And in my 50s, it's starting to make some life sense in terms of the places that the industry has taken me and unexpectedly and doing unexpected things. Like in July, I got to go to Berlin to go work on Homeland. I got to go fly from Los Angeles to Berlin to shoot one scene with Mandy Patinkin. And it's like, I could have never really imagined that.
Yeah. Let me ask you this kind of an important question for much of our audience, many of whom aspire to follow in your footsteps. What would you suggest someone who is 18 years old going to, let's say, USC, maybe they're not playing basketball, but they want to become the next William R. Moses? What advice do you give them?
The advice that I would say was what Larry Moss said to me years ago, which is that, you have to love the craft more than the pitfalls of the career, and you have to love the craft so much that you're willing to deal with whatever the ups and downs of the career. And the career is the business side of acting is hard. It's very, very hard. It is a very, very hard road filled with a lot of rejection. But the only way to overcome that is to love the work more than you hate the rejection. The corollary is in these days, culture is changing. It's been proven that you can have stardom with celebrity. It used to be that stardom came with an ability, and now celebrity is sort of a different thing. And you have to determine in yourself whether you're in love with the actual craft of acting or if you're in love with celebrity. you're in love with celebrity, it's not the career for you, because that's not the be-all and end-all. Is not that. It's something else.
Well, Bill, I can't tell you how much we appreciate your doing this.
Oh, thank you.
I've always been impressed with what I've seen as a profound depth and a maturity well beyond your years, and I think you've conveyed that here in our conversation. And I just want to tell you how much we appreciate your doing this, and I think you're going to be an inspiration to many of our listeners. Can you give us any hint what you're working on now, or what current projects or future stuff we should be looking for?
Well, right now I'm looking for the next one. I'm going to work on a little independent tomorrow night for a friend, but that's probably that's probably a below the radar kind of thing. And then I know this movie I did in Africa last year. I think it's been nominated for several awards in Africa on the continent. So I think they're doing a big award ceremony in Los Angeles. So I'm going to be probably the only white actor at the African award ceremonies.
And that's and the name of that picture is Olibiri?
Olibiri Retold, yeah, and that's
Great.
been nominated for Best Picture on the continent, and the director got a Best Director nomination.
All right, man.
Okay.
Thanks again for doing this.
All right, good talking to you.
Thank you so much.
No problem. Thank you.
I never knew you were such a great basketball player. Next time you and I get together for lunch, I'm bringing a ball and we're having a free throw contest to see who pays.
Yeah, okay. I'm looking forward to it.
All right, Bill. You take care.
Thank you.
Thanks.
All right, good talking to you. Okay, bye-bye.
That was terrific. It's just like talking to the guy when he was 20 years old.
It's like going back to the old Falcon Crest days.
Really.
He's really done really incredible things with his career.
And he's a very thoughtful guy. I mean, very deep.
I'm not quite sure what name he wants to be called these days.
William R. Moses is his professional name.
Okay.
But we know him as Billy.
I remember Billy and Lorenzo Lamas on the show, and they looked like perfect bookends on that show.
They're a great tag team, that's for sure.
They are.
Hey, before we go, now and then Suzanne and I mention things that we've seen on television or in the movies that are kind of seminal and very important, and I think really a valuable thing for people to see who are interested in the industry. We happened to catch something last week on Netflix. It's a documentary called Casting By, and it's the story of Marion Doherty, who was the preeminent casting director in the 60s, 70s, and 80s, responsible for so many major careers. And I just recommend, if you're a Netflix subscriber, take a look at the documentary Casting By. You'll learn a lot about the real truth behind the business.
It was riveting. It really was.
It was terrific. And today I also want to thank all the fabulous people who have given us these wonderful reviews at iTunes. Those reviews really do help. They add up, and they bring a lot more listeners to the podcast. I'm a little verklempt, if you will, the nice things people have said about this podcast, including Madame KDF, Paladin 2000. These are their monikers in iTunes. Great Insights, Zeekness, and Adrian M1. Just want to thank you guys for those great reviews. And for those of you who have not yet posted a review, it's a real simple thing to do. Just go to your iTunes account, check out our podcast, and click reviews, and give us that 5-star rating.
Just want to mention our book again, Where Hollywood Hides Celebrities in Paradise, soon to be in softcover, a great gift or a great read.
Another of our great sponsors you really should check out is 1-800-Flowers.com. Go to our...
Oh, yes, flowers.com. That's
right.
A great idea.
1-800-Flowers.com has a banner on our website, and they are the preeminent floral delivery, really nationwide. Great value, great service.
So this is Suzanne Herrera McCullough.
And Bob McCullough.
And we'll see you at the movies. And today's music is provided by Chance McCullough. You can find more of his original soundtracks at chancemccullough.com.
From Chilicombes and Paducas with their bazookas to get their names up in lights.
All armed with photos from local rotos with their hair in ribbons and legs in tights. Hooray for Hollywood! You have no way of knowing who'll make good.
Maybe you'll be another Papa Dion, your name in neon. If you get lucky, you could. Yes, buddy, you'll arrive if you can top his fire. Hooray for Hollywood!
Hooray for Hollywood!